As entrepreneurs, we all have a reason why we chose to leave our 9 to 5 for an 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. I'm here to capture those stories of why we all hustle and grind for our companies. With over 30 years of senior level management, marketing, and design expertise, Shelley trains global audiences how to powerfully command executive presence and master the art of effective speaking. Working with high-level entrepreneurs and executives, she understands the demands of the evolving workplace, with its increased emphasis on communication skills and leadership influence, and has helped hundreds of people in over 40 countries across a wide variety of industries develop the skills necessary to be empowering, remarkable speakers. Hey, Shelley, thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Oh, it's great to be here, Andrew. Thank you for having me.
Anytime, my pleasure. So I want to start off. Can you just tell folks a little bit about what you do and what your zone of genius is?
I get to work with people and help them bring their story, their vision to fruition through public speaking. For myself, there were so many times where I got caught in the headlights. I was speaking and just froze, literally paralyzed, and didn't really have much to say. And that traumatized me and held me back for a really, really long time. And I don't feel I grew as much as I could as a professional or in the areas where it was my zone of genius. I was in design for a long time. I was in marketing and I excelled, but what did I miss? What was I missing by not speaking up? So what I do is help people get past that, because I feel as a public speaking coach, I've learned to unlock those secrets. And speaking my truth, speaking up, has helped me really excel. And I believe to my fullest potential. And every day is a new experience. So my ambition is to help others do the same.
Awesome. I think that is something that is incredibly important for entrepreneurs is we all have that story. That's one of the reasons why I called my podcast the Hustle and Grind podcast. And it's not about just working yourself to the bone. What it really is about is there is something we are passionate about. We have a story. We have a reason why we do what we do. We have a reason why we traded our 9 to 5 for an 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. There's a reason we do it. And it's that hustle and grind that keeps us going. So I think I love what you do as far as helping those entrepreneurs to be able to tell that story and to facilitate, to show people what that is. I absolutely love that about you. So you were talking about those, that moment where you stand up on stage, and the first one is always a little hard, not knowing what to say, right?
First one, many of them. I got news for you, Andrew. It doesn't go away. That fear may always be with you. There are plenty of times where I feel nervous. So I digress, but it's not just the first one always.
And I think that's super important to hear. I was talking with somebody I know who's been a speaker for 40 some odd years, and even to this day, he gets a little bit just before he goes up and speaks, and very, very accomplished speaker, but just one of those things where it doesn't go away. And I think
And
people
I
need
hope
to hear that.
not.
Yeah.
I hope not, because that's the energy that drives us. When you think of the exhilaration and the adrenaline when you are starting something new and going into the unknown and exploring and having aha moments, that energy is the same energy. So it's up to us to reframe it and go, okay, maybe it's nervous, but it's also excitement. It's the same energy. It's just your brain assigning a different word to it.
I kind of see it like a roller coaster where you're at the top of that hill, and it's that functional anxiety where it's like, I know it's going to happen. This is going to be great. A little scary right now, but it's going to be great once I get into it. And I think that I have seen that even speaking where it's like, I get that wee bit of a rush at the beginning, and it's pushing through, and it is an amazing experience. I get the same thing with like snowboarding as well, where it's like, you get that same little rush. Yeah.
Exactly. It's the same thing. Same energy zone, same energy flow.
Absolutely. So you said you have a background in design and stuff. How did you get started in this? I kind of want to hear that backstory. What was that point that said, I'm going to do this?
Yeah, well, it started with a circus. I was a costume designer at Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus. And there was nothing more spectacular and fantastic. And how I ended up in costume design was my true ambition was to really, I wanted to be a performer.
Mhm.
I wanted to sing and dance. And when I had my opportunity to be on stage, my words escaped me. And that that moment kept me back where I didn't want to be on stage, but I loved theater. I loved entertainment. So costume design became my way of being behind the scenes, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And I stayed there for quite a long time. From there was a journey of taking design to a digital space, which is how I got involved in marketing. So as a designer, I was expressing character through clothing. And in marketing, I was expressing through words, right? And messages and visuals for organizations and brands. Well, there came a time where I was producing a lot of webinars and conferences, helping speakers prepare. And this is long before Zoom. And it was like, wait a minute, what is really connecting that person to the audience? And I only found that out when one day I was forced into the spotlight. The keynote didn't show up, and they're like, hey, Shelley, you kind of wrote this thing. So why don't you get out there and present it? You're the best person. Really? I don't know about that. That lack of time, lack of preparation, so to speak, or so I thought, thrust me into the spotlight. And I didn't do too bad. I didn't really suck that bad. I was okay. So I started my journey thinking, okay, if I just did that, how can I do that more? And my exploration into public speaking and signing up for different public speaking courses, I started to unearth the truth of what was behind that fear and how I can show up and be on more stages. So that background brought me right to where I am today. So it's not just about what you wear, it's not just about what you say, it's about how you say it and how you make people feel.
Yeah. And I guess that critical moment that you had where it's like, I got to do this. I don't have a choice. It's going to work.
There was no choice, it's fight or flight mode, right? The plane's crashing. You don't have time to think about it. You just got to get in there and figure something out.
Yeah. And just make it go right. There's no other option. And I think that's
Do.
something as entrepreneurs we're really good at. We know that discomfort and we just jump. It could be the wrong way to go, but we're going to do it. Just whatever.
Right.
Right.
So the
Yeah.
question, Andrew, is
Yeah.
as the entrepreneur who could just do, what is holding them back from just speaking, right? They can do it. They take all these risks. And I work with lots of executives and entrepreneurs and CEOs, and they take these tremendous risks and they're so good at what they do and the ideas are flowing. But there's something that's missing when it comes to speaking about it. That's the piece that's interesting. That's where I work with them to take that next level. But that's the question.
Mhm. And I guess one of the questions, because I think I heard a while ago, one of the major fears of every person isn't dying or anything, it's speaking. And what would you say to somebody out there who's like, I know in the back of my head I need to do this. I am totally fear-based. There's no way I'm going to have this work. What piece of advice would you say to, and beyond just like go, just do, what other piece of advice would you give them?
Well, there's a process in connecting with what you're saying and really taking ownership.
Mhm.
Taking ownership as an individual to say, I've done these things, I've succeeded here, I've failed here. And it's very a part of who I am and how I got to where I am today as a leader or as a business owner. And taking ownership of those successes and failures and being okay with that and realizing that when you share those moments, you're helping others understand more about your process. That ownership piece is really the way to just get over that hump of saying, well, what I have to say is not important. Of course it is. Look what you've done. It's hugely important.
Yeah. And I've even seen folks who are like, who will say things like, well, somebody's already talked about this. That's great, but you haven't. You have a different perspective. I think that's
Exactly right. It's the experience. No one has your experience. We could all, you and I could share a pizza and be, this is great. It's got cheese, it's got tomatoes, it's got basil. But we each have a unique experience about that same pizza. No two experiences are the same. So you're 100% right. Get out there and tell your version of the story.
and I think a lot of people don't recognize, yes, there's telling your story, but there's also there's a benefit for it where people are getting to know you, and especially from a sales standpoint, which is something that people don't think about, that you can tell stories. You're connecting with a person that's part of sales. And I think that's part of it too, is going out there and being able to build that authority to be able to help, kind of forward whatever business you have. And I think that's something that's really critical with speaking, is to be able to build that rapport with someone. And you can do it through speaking, because we've all seen really good talks, right? And that would get us all engaged. And we really want to learn more about this person. I don't care if you're selling dry spaghetti, I still want to learn more about you.
Well, we buy from organizations and companies that we trust.
Mhm.
We want to know there's a good quality product there, that if something goes wrong or there's a bad experience, that we can, go back and say, hey, can you help me here? That's why companies have customer service departments. However, if we don't get in there and really share that experience of our journey as a salesperson, if we're asking somebody to give us hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of dollars in seed money, if I got to know that I can trust you, I have to know what kind of leader you're going to be, how you're going to manage people. And the only way to do that is to share your experiences. That's how we know who you are.
Yeah. I saw a study by it was one of the biggest angel investment companies in the nation. And they said that out of 216 pitches that they saw, the one common criteria that they had for selecting somebody for funding was the CEO, how passionate they were, and how personable they were. Because they had already seen the numbers before the pitch even happened. And so it was a 15-minute pitch, 15 minutes of Q&A afterwards. And that was one of the criteria. Yeah. And
That's fantastic. I'd love to know that study. Maybe you
yeah,
could share mine. That sounds
absolutely.
fascinating, but it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. And that's exactly right. They see all the facts and figures. They can read it in the reports, but a number is a number. And Brene Brown says it beautifully. Stories are data with a soul. That data started with human interaction. So bring that data to life.
Yeah. And show what's behind it and that passion behind it and where you got it. I mean, numbers are dull, but bring a story to them and they're a whole lot more fun.
Well, you can't tell that to a CPA or mathematicians. They love numbers. I love numbers, but what makes them exciting is the story. You're absolutely right.
As a self-professed data nerd, I can tell you, I love my numbers too. But yeah, but after years of doing like FDA compliance training and a whole bunch of other things, it just came to light that just stories are so much more fun.
Absolutely. That's awesome.
Once you've trained FDA training a few times, it's sort of like, yeah, we need to bring something to this. I got like half the class falling asleep. So I'd love you to tell me a story, and it doesn't have to be names or anything, but what was a person you really helped? Like what made a really phenomenal change in their lives and really helped them to get over? Is like one story that stands out to you?
Just one. It's so pivotal because when people can be self-expressed, it is life-changing. It's a pressure that comes off of them. To think of one particular example recently is a young person that, quite a brilliant young man. He finished number 2 out of all of India in a mathematics and computer science competition when he was a young person,
Hmm.
and made his way to Yale. Okay,
Hmm.
so not a dumb person,
Mhm.
really bright and really really entrepreneurial by nature and spirit. This is a young person telling at age 16, telling his father to invest all their money into some stocks, and they didn't have that kind of money. They were from a small village. working with this person and helping them interview for a higher position at a really higher level investing. This person with that accomplishment was actually terrified, was going through the bullet points and was saying, this interview is so pivotal. I wanted, he wanted it as badly as he wanted to get that number 2 position in that competition. So working with him on different techniques of public speaking and getting him to take ownership, getting him to reflect on his life's accomplishments and reveal them in ways that people could connect. His response to me from an interview with the CEO, and this CEO was rapid fire questions, pressure, pressure, pressure. His response after working together and having that interview, he said to me, his response was, boy, I was so relaxed. We had such a great conversation. It went great. That was from an interview, a great conversation. I was relaxed. That's all I had to hear. Now, we're still waiting to find out if he's getting the job, but this was a pivotal moment. And he even said that to me. He goes, I've done it.
Yeah.
I showed up in a high stakes situation and I was just relaxed. And now it's just, he's out there interviewing more and just being himself in a relaxed conversational way. He said his life's changed forever.
Yeah. And I love hearing stories like that where it's just, I am so well prepared. I feel so prepared that I'm just ready to do this and I'm in my flow. I'm in my zone. We're moving forward. I love hearing that. Cool. So as far as your clients, I just want to get a little bit more kind of clarity on, do you work with only corporate? Do you work with entrepreneurs? See all of the above? Like what specific people do you work with?
I work the sweet spot for me, and sweet spot by, yes, it's open. I work with many, many people at many different levels of, titles and corporate ladders and small businesses. But my sweet spot is really the high level successful entrepreneur, CEO, executive that feels isolated in their tower, that they're good at what they do, but they cannot connect with the people they work with. They are terrified to just go on a podcast or, be interviewed for an article. And it's almost a disservice when they hold back, because the information they possess, their experiences, like I said earlier, the failures, the successes, by not sharing that, how else can the people within their organization be inspired, be motivated, and maybe even actualize their own dreams? So that's the sweet spot. And typically what happens is when I work with those leaders, they'll bring me into their companies to help the different levels of staff. Because let's face it, if you're in an organization, you're selling products, the front person, the spokesperson for your organization is the customer service representative, the person who's picking up the phone and answering and dealing with challenging situations from maybe unhappy or happy clients and customers. So being able to work from that top level down is hugely important.
Having having been in customer service in that industry, yeah, it's the front face, but so definitely I resonate with that. But so really interesting to kind of, you were talking about kind of the leaders being in their ivory tower, and I think that's an experience that a lot of high performing people get, where it's difficult. They feel as part of their job that they can't be vulnerable because the perception of their employees is really critical. They have to have complete faith in leadership, and if I'm vulnerable, that faith is lost. And I think that's something that a lot of folks witness. Is that something you see, or is it something that you think, kind of coming from an outside objective observer point, is a fallacy? What have you seen?
I see it all day long. It is that vulnerability piece. How can I be vulnerable? How can I reveal myself and still have that leadership image? Well, the ivory tower is pretty isolating. And we have mentors in our lives. Most of us are lucky to have mentors. And it's not a matter of being in a tower or not being locked in a tower. It's having that open conversation to know that you can excel at anything you do. And the tower is just boundaries. They're just mental walls where you're holding yourself out. But we all start somewhere. We're all the same. We've all had a first job. We've all had a first day at work. We've all had a first, you know, day on, driving. There's so many firsts in our lives that if we think of ourselves in that situation, that we're all basically, we want to do good, hopefully, and we want to move forward. So if you're in a position where you've had more experiences, which is really what it comes down to, more successes, more failures, sharing it and breaking down those mental walls that I'm in a tower is pivotal to you engaging. So the vulnerability piece is just really not having that negative approach to the vulnerability. It's not a bad thing. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to necessarily be completely private. You don't have to reveal your innermost, deepest, darkest secrets. That's your choice as a speaker. Yeah. But personal moments, we all have them. So it behooves you to share them.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes that can be a helpful or something that will help people. I had a client years ago who I was doing a speech and he didn't want to tell that his dad was an alcoholic. It was just, that was a little bit too vulnerable for him, although a lot of people have a similar experience, and I pushed him to do it. And it's like, now it's a bigger part of what he does. And he has had people resonate with that going, hey, I've got this same thing. My dad was also an alcoholic, or my so-and-so is also, and now I have that, now I have a better connection with you. Not too personal, but it's enough that it built that connection and helped. Yeah.
Yeah. And somebody might think that's very personal and somebody might think it's not. But to your point, when we give of ourselves, we realize we're not the only ones. We're not isolated in a tower. We are one of many. Like I said, we all have firsts. So experiencing that and having an audience and a community to share those ideas is actually a relief. It's actually less stressful, and you feel like you connect deeper. And that's really just the essence of the connection piece about being a better speaker and being able to communicate with the people that work with you and for you.
Absolutely. So we're kind of getting to the end of the interview here. And so I want to ask a question. I ask this of all of my guests. And what is one podcast or book that has seriously changed your life? Like that has given you a new insight, something else. What is one podcast or book?
Well, I think Adam Grant has written so many amazing books that have been very pivotal for me because they've given me different ways to look at things. Mm-hmm. And it's helped me grow a lot. He's just come out with a new one called Hidden Potential. Mm-hmm. And there's also one called Think Again. And like I said, the most incredible things about his writing is it really gives me pause to look at things from completely different perspectives. It's not about me. It's about a lot of other people in the room. And then it sort of makes, well, it does. It makes speaking and it makes just being a lot more engaging and honest and comfortable.
Awesome. He is such an amazing human. I just really love his content. And so wonderful. It's awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I really, really appreciate it. You are an awesome human being, and I'm honored to have you on here.
Oh, it was a great pleasure, Andrew. This was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Anytime. Thanks again for joining us on the Hustle and Grind podcast. If you'd like to learn more about Shelley, check the link in the description.